Happy Father's Day, happy Juneteenth weekend, happy Sunday. This is the day the Lord has made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. This is your favorite Sunday school teacher, K. Edward Copeland, coming to you through the facilities of New Zion Missionary Baptist Church, trusting that you're experiencing God's grace to you today and that you're remembering that He is good and He's good all the time. So we're grateful to God for just another day, really. And for those of you who are watching this, some may be watching it later on in the day, later on in the week. We still anticipate that you would interact with us in the comment section. As always, we're asking that you would start out by typing in how you're doing today. Put in a word or a phrase that lets us know where you are emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and then type in the top 3 things. Watch this. We're going to double up on you today. I want you to type in the top 3 things that you're most grateful for as it relates to your father. Now, I recognize on Father's Day that it might be bittersweet for some people because maybe your father wasn't around, or maybe your father has transitioned, or maybe you just don't have a good relationship with your father. But everybody has a father figure. You might have had a bonus father. You might have had a good coach, a good Sunday school teacher, a good teacher in school who just sort of picked up the slack and impacted you in a positive way. So let's give a shout out to fathers, grandfathers, godfathers, coaches, deacons, Sunday school teachers, whoever was a good father figure to you. Go ahead and type in what you're most grateful for as you think about them. I'm grateful for the legacy of my father. Grateful for a whole lot of things, but just off the top of my head, grateful for his consistency, the way that he showed me that Christians don't live one way in public and then live a different way at home. He was consistent. Thank God for his prayer life. He prayed for my sister and I and our brother. And thank God for his commitment to Christ and his commitment to justice. My father, if there was such a thing as a justice warrior, that was my dad. And I'm grateful for that legacy, grateful for that pattern he's laid out before us. Go ahead and type in, give a shout out to your father, godfather. I'm grateful for my godfather, Ray Kemp. I had great godparents. Actually, the usher board number 4 kind of in general were like honorary godparents, but my designated, the couple that came forward with my parents when I was dedicated was Ray and B. Kemp. And I bless their memory. I bless the memory of my godfather. He's a great godfather. And all the great men, down through the years. Dr. Hezekiah, let me call some names. Dr. Hezekiah Brady. Don't want to get choked up, but I want to thank God for not just godfathers, but fathers in the gospel, fathers in the Lord. Dr. Lester Cannon. These are men who've gone on to glory. Deacon Eddie Price, whose memory will always be a blessing. These were godly men who had an impact on me, and whose consistency, whose commitment to the Lord, whose stand for justice and willingness to serve is still a well that I draw from now and find great courage as I look at the godly men who've gone on before me and have laid out some righteous paths for me to just stick with. So go ahead and shout out the godly men in your life. We're going to get at this thing. This was Juneteenth weekend. Man, I had to give it to Brother Meeks and all those who have been responsible for the Juneteenth celebrations here in Rockford, because they just get better every year. And man, every year is just packed out. Can't find parking. It's just a good big family reunion. So shout out to all the organizers here in Rockford. And that was just the one down at Mississippi Park. There's stuff going on all around here in Rockford. Cameo is here and this and that. So thank God. And that's what I'm going to get at today. I'm going to talk about today the spiritual duty to remember. And I invite you to open up your Bible to Psalm 78. For those of you who are just joining us, I need you to check in. The way you check into this digital space is by letting us know how you're doing today. Type into the comments section. How you doing? What's going on with you? Emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. The reason we do that is we're trying to teach you good mental and spiritual hygiene. You have to acknowledge, you have to admit, you have to be honest with where you are in the moment. Get used to checking in with yourself to see, okay, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What is going on with me? Check in with yourself, even physically. Man, did you get a good night's sleep? You got a crick in your neck? What's going on with you? See what I'm saying? And then after you do that, type in what you're grateful for as it relates to the father figures in your life. Maybe your father has transitioned, but his blessing can yet be a memory. Maybe you and your biological father didn't have the best relationship, but God gave you some bonus fathers. He gave you some godly men somewhere who had an influence on you. And so let's celebrate them. Or could have been, let me not just brush past, could have been a good granddaddy, good uncle, man, good cousins. I'm grateful to God that on both sides of my family, that is on my mother's side and my father's side, just got good godly cousins, just cousins older than me that are just good men and good uncles. Man, just blessed to have good godly men that I could look up to, got to meet and got to spend time with my grandfathers who had come through, man, the Great Migration, had come through raising children on little or nothing, and yet were not bitter, but were gracious and just loved to be around their grandchildren. And now, as a gray beard, I got grandchildren, and I find nothing more delightful. There's nothing better than grandchildren. Got a fresh one. And he's pure chocolate. Man, just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. So give a shout out to those who have impacted you, and open up your Bible to Psalm 78. Let me see if I can't get at this. And for the men who are in Rockford, we're having breakfast here at 9:00 for fathers. And so you yet got time. Men, you know how to get dressed real quick. You yet got time. You yet have opportunity to come out and fellowship with us at 9 a.m. as we'll be having a Father's Day breakfast right here. Man, I smell it right now. They doing what they do. And if you've ever been to Newzion, man, we have some fantastic cooks, and they're back there right now fixing a fantastic breakfast for fathers, grandfathers, those godly figures. All right, has everybody checked in? Let's get at it. Psalm 78. Now, the spiritual duty to remember. Let me read some of Psalm 78, and then let's apply it to our current situation. The reason I'm doing this is because I might have taught this lesson before. I don't know if I have, but whether I have or not, I want to remind us here between Juneteenth, we just celebrated on the 19th, and looking forward to July the 4th, the 250th anniversary of these yet to be United States. I want to remind us that ignoring or whitewashing history is not an option, And I'm not saying that for political or social reasons. I'm saying that for spiritual reasons. I'm saying that the Bible says that we have a duty to remember our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That regardless of what the current administration says, or certain factors within our society might try to promote, that you don't get to just ignore history. And now, let me be clear. That's not just for a country. That's for a family. And matter of fact, let me start right there. And that's for you individually. Let me start with you individually and then start talking about the family. You have your Bible open to Psalm 78. I'm getting ready to read it in just a second. But I want you to understand what's at stake here in this lesson. That you can't afford to forget what God has brought you through. Yeah, don't act like you always been where you are right now. You cannot afford to forget those times. Don't make me call the roll, but those times where you said, Lord, if you just get me out of this one, and here you are, he done got you out, and now you forgot? No, you can't afford to forget. Here's how the hymn writers would say, I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was blind, but now I see. You can't afford to forget. Now you say, wait a minute, Pastor, hang on. I've been through some trauma and I'm trying to forget. No, what I'm saying is you got to process things, but you can't afford to forget the lessons that have been born out of the process, even the trauma. Now, I'm not saying live in trauma. I'm not saying rehearse trauma. I'm saying don't forget two things. Number one, that whatever you talking about, God brought you through. Somebody type in, God brought me through. Y'all ain't, listen, I ain't fooling with y'all today. I got to get done with my lesson. Whatever you going through, God brought you through or you wouldn't even be hearing me. You know how I brought you through, how I know he brought you through is because you're listening right now, which means you came through a worldwide pandemic that killed millions of people. But somehow or another, though millions didn't make it, you're one of the ones who did. Don't tell me that God didn't bring you through. Now, whatever your individual history, maybe you didn't have a good relationship with your father. Maybe there was some kind of misconduct or abuse within your family. I'm not saying that you stew in that. I'm saying don't forget to remember, and number one, God brought you through, and don't forget to remember the lessons that come out of that so that you don't perpetuate the cycle, so that you don't do I was just talking to one of my children yesterday. I'm like, look, and I always say to my spiritual children, some have texted me today, and I'm thinking about some of the beautiful people that God has brought into my life as spiritual children. I always tell them, look, don't make the mistakes I make. Watch me. You see me. And if I made the mistake, don't you make it, because that's crazy. I've already come through that. Learn from my lessons. Pick out the good stuff and say, okay, now that I'm going to repeat, that I'm going to continue on. That's a legacy. That's what I'm going to be talking about later. That's a legacy I need to hang on to. But then there's some things even in my life that you need to look at. I tell my children, tell my godchildren, you need to look at it and say, okay, now I see where he made a mistake there. I'm not going to make that same mistake. So in your personal life, in your family, the reason dysfunction multiplies and continues down through generations is either sometimes people don't tell the truth about what happened, and then that cycle just keeps going, these generational patterns, because nobody will be honest enough to open up and say, look, this is what happened. You got a whole nother set of siblings over there. Sometimes it don't even come out until the funeral, or that, man, this is what granddaddy did. This is what grandmama was like. But guess what? We ain't following that. Because if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Regardless of what the pattern has been in your family, if you'll remember, reflect upon it, then you don't have to repeat it. That's what I'm trying to get at today. If you don't get nothing else, let's look at the Bible now. Psalm 78. If you don't get nothing else, if you will remember, not just remember, but reflect, that is, get the lesson out of that thing, to observe and watch and to consider and say, okay, now see how my parents did. I see how my grandparents did. I see how, let me talk about me, for example. On my father's side, my grandfather had 14 children, 11 girls and 3 boys. But my grandmother used to call my grandfather Mr. Copeland. And so I've heard my aunts, all of them, their generation is gone now. So I don't have to change no names to protect the innocent. The sisters said, I'm not going to do my husband like that. My grandmother called my grandfather Mr. Copeland. The girls, a lot of them grew up with a little edge of resentment. I ain't gonna do no man like that. And it came out in how they dealt with their husbands. Now, up under that, some of my cousins in that, now this third generation, I said, no, we know where it came from. We saw how our mama and them did with their husbands, but now we got the Bible, we Christians, we gonna follow the scriptural thing as relates to how husbands and wives ought to interact. That is, we're partners in this thing together. Yeah, he's a leader. Yeah, I have to line up with him. That don't mean I'm of lesser value. That don't mean that everything he says is right. But we gonna communicate and work this thing out. And so I salute, might have a cousin or two on here right now. I salute the cousins in my generation because they saw, okay, wait a minute. I see how, I remember how the stories about this and that I've reflected on, okay, the dynamics within my family. And now I'm not going to repeat the foolishness, but I'm going to set a new pattern for the future generations that if they follow in my footsteps, that they're going to be all right. Psalm 78. Let's take a look at this thing. Now, I've been talking about individual. I've been talking about family. Let's switch this thing up and apply it across the board, even as it relates to a country, because some people, even now, very interesting. You know, some people, even the president talking about, now, mind you, in his first administration, he didn't even know what Juneteenth was. Somebody explained to him what Juneteenth was, and then he tried to take credit, said, well, didn't nobody know nothing about it until whatever. But now, all of a sudden, why are we celebrating Juneteenth? All these types of things. Why are we celebrating when enslaved people learned their freedom? Because this is part of the story of America. And until we get a handle on it, until we as a country not only remember, but reflect, we're going to keep on repeating the same dysfunction. Come here, psalmist. Let me see if what I'm saying is biblically correct. If I'm basing what I'm saying on a biblical principle. Let's see. Psalm 78. Listen, O my people, to my instruction. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I'll open my mouth in a parable. I'll utter dark sayings of old, verse 3, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not conceal them from their children, but tell to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should teach them to their children, that the generation to come might know, even the children yet to be born, that they may arise and tell them to their children, that they should put their confidence in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. Here it is, verse 8, and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not prepare its heart and whose spirit was not faithful to God. Now, I could stop the lesson right there. If you just heard what I said and read it for your doggone self, you see that the Bible lays out this spiritual principle that we have a responsibility to teach history to our children, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what God has done and his wondrous works, so that they'll have confidence in him. But they should also not forget, look at verse 8, to not do some stuff that previous generation. Am I reading my Bible right? Look in your Bible. I'm trying to see if I got a different translation here. I'm reading New American Standard Bible, Psalm 78, verse 8, and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not prepare its heart and whose spirit was not faithful to God. And then he goes on throughout the rest of this psalm to point out the times how they rebelled against God and how part of the problem was that they did not remember. When you have spiritual amnesia, rebellion is inevitable. Now, let me say this, that these yet to be United States, as we prepare for the 250th anniversary, July the 4th, and as we continue to reflect upon Juneteenth, where for more than 2 years, free people were still being treated as if they were enslaved. For 2 years, 2.5 years actually, for 2.5 years, people were taking whippings they didn't need to take, were taking sexual abuse that they didn't have to take. They were following orders that they didn't have to take because some powers that be, and this is just another thing that shows how evil the slavery system was. The powers that be, even though there was a document signed, even though there was a law put in that was legal, a legal edict put in place, they were not going to do right unless they were forced to do right. Can I say this just in passing? It is still the case that regardless of what documents say, there have been court cases for how many years against discrimination, all these stuff. Unless somebody enforces it, the forces of evil are going to keep on doing what they've been doing, regardless of what's written on the paper. They know it's against the law. They know the enslavers in Texas and various other places knew the Emancipation Proclamation has been signed, but they wouldn't let the people who were enslaved know that because they still wanted to act like God, still wanted to have control over somebody else's body. My point is this, we can't afford to forget that because, as the scripture says, there's some things we don't want to repeat. There's some things that we don't want to continue to perpetuate this idea. And so we have to remember, how the Native Americans were treated because there's still some injustices as it relates to them right now. We have to remember that even once the Emancipation Proclamation, we have to remember that when the people who wrote the Declaration of Independence said, all men are created equal, that when they wrote that, Thomas Hemings, I'm talking about when they signed that, Thomas Hemings, Sally Hemings' brother, was in the room, an enslaved person. And let me just say this, that there were people even at that time, like Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife, who said, y'all hypocrites. How y'all in there writing something about freedom and you enslaving people? So let me say this. It's always been about right and wrong, not about black and white, because even back at the Declaration of Independence and even coming up to the Civil War, there were white people who said, wait a minute, this ain't right. This is hypocritical. How we a country say we're based on freedom and this and that and the other, and then here enslave people. So it's never been just white and black. It's been right and wrong. And if we forget the history, then you'll get what we get right now with people saying, oh, well, no, that's just woke. That's just this. That's just that. No, it's just y'all trying to repeat history. And that's why you don't want us to remember history. And thanks be to God, the Supreme Courts in certain cities said, no, y'all got to put that history back up on the thing. You can't erase history because we don't want to repeat the bad parts. Now, the good parts, the fact that we have a country that is built upon, now this is a good part that we need to hang on to. The fact that our country is built upon checks and balances. We don't have a monarchy here. We have a legislative, an executive, a judicial branch, and they are co-equal, and they're supposed to hold each other in check. We can't afford to forget that that's true too. And so you can't just let one person just run everything and just run roughshod over the judiciary. Got all kind of court cases that have said that, for example, they're not supposed to be doing the ballroom, and there's other things they ain't supposed to be doing, and they still doing it, but they'll continue to do it until somebody enforces it. My whole point is that the Bible is clear that as an individual, as a family, and as a country, we can't afford to forget the good things that God has done for us. God has been good to these yet to be United States. That's just true. God has, and this is why we celebrate Juneteenth. Even in the face of evil and evil men, there were literally white people who gave their life to end slavery. And once Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, it was General Granger and all of them who had to get all them troops and march down to Galveston and say, look, y'all know them people free, turn them loose. That was right. And that's something we ought to celebrate. But don't forget some of the stuff. You say, oh, that was ancient history. Wait a minute. Don't forget some of the stuff that's happened in my lifetime. Ruby Bridges, I don't know if she's even as old as I am, but Ruby Bridges is yet alive. Ruby Bridges ain't that old. Remember that she was the one that federal troops had to escort her to school, and that all the white parents took their students out of the school. She was in a school building with her as the only student. But watch this. Get all the history. It was a white teacher from Boston who moved down there and taught Ruby Bridges. And Ruby Bridges said that teacher treated me like I was her daughter. And I got my lesson. I got my education and all that kind of stuff. Cause that teacher, I forgot her name. It seemed like it was Barbara. I want to say Barbara Henry. I'm almost certain that's her name. Barbara Henry, while this 6-year-old was being terrorized by grown people, spitting and throwing rocks at her, this white teacher was brave enough to move from Boston, move down south, say, no, that ain't right. I'm going to see, you got to remember the good, the bad, and the ugly. You got to remember all of it so we can repeat the good stuff and stop repeating the bad stuff. Now, let me get another lick in here and try to get at it from a different angle. I hope you're sort of following along with me, that God has commanded, and Psalm 78 is just one place, but it's a great place to look at it, that when we forget, when we refuse to remember God's grace to us and how he has given us what we don't deserve and withheld from us what we should have gotten in terms of punishment, when we forget that, then rebellion is inevitable. I won't walk through the whole psalm, but we're still in Psalm 78. Psalm 78 says in verse 10 and 11, they did not keep the covenant of God and refused to walk in his law. They forgot his deeds and the miracles he had shown them. He goes on to talk about how, man, he divided the Red Sea, led them by cloud by day, fire by night, split, verse 15, split rocks in the wilderness so that they could have something to drink. Verse 17, but they continue to sin against him, to rebel against the Most High in the desert. Why did they continue to do that? Because they forgot what he already had done. And so if I keep reading, I'm in Psalm 78. In their heart, they put God to the test. This is verse 18, Psalm 78, verse 18. In their heart, they put God to the test by asking food according to their desire. And they spoke against God and said, can God prepare a table in the wilderness? Behold, he struck the rocks so waters gushed out. Streams were overflowing, but can he give bread? And will he provide meat for his people? And the Lord heard that and was full of wrath. Now, why? What's going on there? Literally what's happening. And let's bring this back to the personal level. And then I'm going to get a couple more licks in and I'm going to let you go. Every time we sin, one or two things are happening. Either we're forgetting that God is omnipresent and we're neglecting to acknowledge his presence right where we are, or, and sometimes it's a combo, we're taking matters into our own hands because we've forgotten how God has blessed us in the past. So when you worry, when you fret, when you self-medicate, when you, whatever your signature sin, I don't know what your signature sin is, whatever your sin is, typically it's because you forgot that, number one, God is present, and number two, that God can handle anything. So you try to handle it yourself. And so when you stress eat, or you self-medicate. Or I wish I had my bottle. Or you see, you done forgot that, wait a minute, last time I did this, last time I self-medicated, this is what I mean by memory. Last time I self-medicated, last time I got drunk, last time I puff and pass. When I came down off the high, when I got sober again, the problem was still sitting there looking at me. Like, you done? You finished? You still got these bills. You still got the problem. So self-medication don't work. And you've forgotten last time you prayed and God answered your prayer, and you know nobody but God could have done that. You forgot that, man, if he did it before, surely he'll do it again. This is my conviction. If God been good, he gonna be good. That's right. So this idea of memory, what happened in the text, and you can read it because the psalmist is going to give like 3 or 4 different examples. He said the reason they rebelled is they forgot the miracles that God had done. He got them out of Egypt after 10 plagues, Passover, death angel, killing all the firstborn, got them through the Red Sea. But then they got to a place, actually, one of the first miracles he did was after they got through the Red Sea and they were marching through the wilderness, they had gone for like 3 days and hadn't found any fresh water. Then they found some water, and it was bitter water. But God healed the water, and that's when God says, I'm the God who heals you. All right, that's good. But then they got further in the desert, and they said, we tired of eating this manna. Now think about it. Tired of eating bread from heaven. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. They were hungry, and they said, well, we're hungry. What is God going to do? So what God did is, in verse 23 of Psalm 78, he commanded the clouds above, opened the doors of heaven, and rained down manna upon them to eat, gave them food from heaven. Man did eat the bread of angels. He sent food in abundance. And then he caused the wind to blow, so that they had quail to eat and all that type of thing, and satisfied their desires. But yet, even after that, they still didn't believe and still didn't remember all the great things that God has done, and then they fell in a rebellion again. Let me just say it this way. We tend to follow the pattern of the children of Israel, and that is, we cry out to God and he does some kind of miraculous thing that only he could have done. And we celebrate that thing for a moment until we get to the next crisis. And then we act like or forget that he already brought us through something worse. Now, if God brought you through a Red Sea, killed all your enemies and all that type of thing, you mean he ain't gonna feed you? God said, that's crazy. If I did the harder thing, surely I'm going to do this thing. Paul picks up on that same type of logic in Romans chapter 8 when he says, if God did not spare his own son, how will he not along with him give us everything that we need? If God be for us, who can be against us? Or as my daddy used to say, if God be for us, what difference does it make? Who's against us? Because he's already did the hard thing. You mean he saved your soul, but he ain't going to pay your bills? Why would he do that? He brought you through all the trauma that you faced as a child and got you safely here. Other people who came through what you came through went crazy, or some didn't even make it, and some aren't here now. But here you are. But he ain't going to keep you all the way? No, that don't make any sense. If you remember and reflect upon what he's already brought you through, then it'll keep you from falling into rebellion and acting like you got to take matters into your own hands, or that you have to do it yourself, No. Everything you have, God gave you. Everywhere you've been, God brought you. Everything you are, God made you. And he's kept you. Type in, kept. Listen, if you don't remember anything else, God has been keeping you. He's been keeping you. And if you will not just remember and reflect, but if you'll rehearse, if you'll share your testimony, that's what the testimony actually is, right? This is the way in which God has been good in my life, despite whatever the challenge was or despite my own behavior. And in Psalm 78, I'm not going to go through any of the rest of it. I want you to read the Psalm for yourself. Basically, it's just a repeated cycle of the children of Israel rebelling against God when they don't remember how good he's already been. So we have a spiritual duty to remember that we've been kept from virus and violence, kept in your right mind when other people would have went crazy if they've been through what you've been through. Wait a minute. You gas $50, $1,100 and you still got some gas in the old hoopty. You've been kept, children. And the same one that kept you is going to keep you. Hang on. The same one that brought you is going to bring you safely home. He's not through with you yet. The best is yet to come because he's a keeper. Right? Yes, he is. He that keepeth you, he don't slumber. He don't sleep. All he does is keep on blessing you, keep on forgiving you. Now, this is why it's so important to remember. See, when you forget how bad you've been, you can't appreciate how good God been. When you forget what he's brought you out of, then you tend to be insensitive toward other people who are going through things. But if you remember what he brought you out of, then you have empathy and you can relate and you can have compassion toward other people who are going through things. And more importantly, when you remember what you've already come through, it'll give you confidence that, okay, I've been through worse. I was listening to an interview. Adele, the singer, Adele is one of my favorite people. He's talking about some of the stuff that she had been through that I didn't even realize. And it gave me a greater appreciation that, you know what? She'd been through some stuff, but she processed that thing. And the way she processes stuff, she turns it into multi-platinum albums and then goes on and lives her little life. Got her little man and, doing her little thing. I said, you better go on here, Adele. I like your attitude that it don't matter what I've been through. I see it. I remember it. Now think about it. All of her albums, what's her albums? Like 19, 25, and 30. I think that's the name of her albums. They're literally almost autobiographical. She has historically put forever in the American music lexicon the stuff that she's been through. So she'll never forget it, but as she reflects upon it, she's processed that thing and turned her misery into multi-platinum hits. Come on here. I'm trying to say that the best is yet to come for you. So don't forget what he's already done. Let me give you one more lick and let me close this thing down. I got to get in here for breakfast. If you are in Rockford, you should be on your way to New Zion right now because we're having breakfast for the fathers. Now, let me hit this same thing from a different angle. Psalm 137. I looked at just a few verses in Psalm 78. Let me look at Psalm 137, and then I'm going to make some comments because I've said that all of our memories, let me say this, all of our memories are not pleasant. Even here on Father's Day, All of your memories of your father might not be present. I'm not so naive as to think that every father has been a good father. I know that there are absent fathers. I know there are abusive fathers. I know there's emotionally distant fathers. I know through no fault of your own, there might have been some things going on with you and your father. And I know that some of you, even today, while I'm speaking, might be grieving because your father is not here. Maybe it's been years now, but nobody can put an expiration date on grief because nobody knows how much you love and miss somebody. I recognize all of that. My whole point today, however, is that as we not only remember, but reflect, that is, you don't stew in trauma, but you process what you've been through. And if you process it the way we see in the Psalms, and that's why we advocate praying through the Psalms, we see that you can come out on the other end with clearer perspective, wiser, more confidence in the Lord, and even praise for the fact that God has brought you through. But now, let me hit a different angle, though. Psalm 137 says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Now, this is a hymn writer talking about the fact that during exile, that is to say, when the children of Israel have been taken into Babylonian captivity, he says, then we remembered Zion, and upon the willows in the midst of it, that is, in the midst of Babylon, we hung up our hearts, for there our captors demanded of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Verse 4, how can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? I think old King James says, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? But look at verse 5. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget her skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I don't remember you, if I don't exalt Jerusalem above my chief joy. Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom, the days of Jerusalem, who said, raise it to the very foundation. O daughter of Babylon, you devastated one, how blessed is the one who prays you with the recompense which you've paid us. How blessed will be the ones who sees and dashes your little ones against the rock. Well, that took a strange turn at the end, didn't it? Let's unpack it for just a second. Look at what's happening here. They're in Babylonian captivity. They've been exiled. They've been uprooted from their homeland and taken to a place where the people who have enslaved them demand of them entertainment. And what they say is, listen, this is a foreign land, this is a strange land, and how can we sing even while how are we going to make it? Look what they said. See, we're not going to forget where we came from. We're not going to forget Zion in Jerusalem. We're not going to forget that it hasn't always been like it is, that we have a glorious past. And because of that, we have confidence that God is going to give us an even brighter future. The psalmist says, look, I'm not going to forget where I came from. I'm not going to forget Jerusalem. And I'm not going to forget, and if I do forget, may I lose the skill to even play. And then he in verse 7, 8, and 9, he prays to God. We call this an imprecatory psalm. Imprecatory meaning asking God to take care of your enemies, that I've been done wrong. And instead of me taking matters into my own hands, God, I want you. Now, notice what he says. It's very stark language. He says, blessed will be the ones who repay Babylon for enslaving us, and blessed will be the ones who dash your children upon the rocks. Now, why would he say that? Because the Israeli children, that is, the children of the person, of the people who have been enslaved, their children have been done like that. And he's saying, I hope God pays you back for the way that you treated us. Now, let me say something. We're living in a day where people will try to justify a 1-year-old being shot because the mother was accused of stealing diapers. Living in a day where a 14-year-old child can be chased for more than a football length field and shot in the back because they say he stole some water. We live in a day where it's easy, particularly if you're chocolate, it's easy to get bitter, easy to get resentful. But I suggest an alternate path, and that is to remember what God has brought us through, remember where we came from. And our history didn't start in slavery in America. I'm from the Yoruba people in Nigeria. We had culture long before Europeans came. I come from a great people. And even my people here in these yet to be United States, my great grandfather was born in 1852. He was born enslaved. Won't go through the full story, but they used to make him sleep up under the house. He would get warm by laying up against the bottom of the fireplace. The dogs would come around and lay up against him. That's how he stayed warm. But yet, after slavery ended, by the time he died, he was born in 1852, 1852, died in 1952, Magnolia, Arkansas. By the time he died, he'd amassed enough property, even though he was blind by the time he died, that he gave land to the First Baptist Church. He gave land to the high school. Our family still owns the top soil that he gave, and leased, to the local airport. What I'm saying is, we don't forget history, but we don't resent history. We reflect upon history to move us forward. So every time I want to feel sorry for myself or think things are tough or I remember my great-granddaddy. I remember my grandfather who had to cut logs and raise 14 children down in Dotson, Louisiana. They say during the Depression, because my father was born in 1933, right after they were coming up out of the Depression. During the Depression, grandfather said that God made the rabbits so slow that you could kill them with a rock. Yeah, tough times, but we remember and we reflect upon how they could have raised 14 children and how my father, came up from Louisiana and married a pretty chocolate woman in Kansas City, Missouri, raised me and my sister, and a multitude of spiritual children. My father's memory is yet a blessing, and my mother will be celebrating her 90th birthday. Why? Because God been good. And I just believe if he been good, he gonna be good. And so in days and times like this, where evil people are trying to erase history and try to make us believe that it's all right to kill black children, shoot babies, because you say somebody stole a diaper, shoot young men because you think they stole a bottle of water, or give a young man 35 years when people who have literally shot people on purpose have gotten less time. The guy the police officer who shot Sonia Massey, he just got sentenced the other week, shot somebody who called on him to ask for help, shot her, and then wouldn't do anything to help her after he shot her. He got 22 years, but this young man got 35. I'm not saying he shouldn't got anything. You got to be held accountable for your actions. I'm saying that I remember history, and we see in some same patterns being repeated, but I am of the opinion, because I remember history, that evil men plot evil things, but they never count on the fact that evil is incapable of a perfect plan because evil never counts on divine intervention. And the Bible I read says, hang on, Psalm 78, that the Most High, listen, they forgot his deeds, but let me read this one thing. It says about God that he does wonderful works, and we should not conceal from our children. This is verse 4. We should not conceal from our children, but tell the generations to come the praises of the Lord, his strength and his wondrous works that he has done. He's been good to you individually, so don't act like he ain't been good. Yeah, you haven't made it just like that turtle sitting up on the post. You didn't make it there by yourself. And God is going to keep on taking you. Your family, regardless of what has gone on in your family, don't forget, okay, now we have some of this type of dysfunction. We have some of that in my family. I remember, and I'm going to reflect so that I don't repeat the bad parts. Treat your family history like a good piece of buffalo fish. Eat the meat, leave the bones alone. But as it relates to our history as a country, yes, we should celebrate 250 years, but don't try to take out the essential parts of our history. The 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments of our Constitution would not have been written if our forefathers were serious at the beginning when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. That's a great sentence if only somebody would enforce it. And now we back to arguing about voting rights and all that kind of stuff. Same old history that we have not reflected upon and learned the lessons from. But let's do our best from where we are in our personal lives, in our family lives, as well as in our civic engagement, to not let people let people erase history, because biblically there's a spiritual duty to remember the good, the bad, and the ugly, lest you rob God of his glory, because all things work together for good to those who love God and are the called according to his purpose. Now, here's the assignment. I got to let you go. Regardless of what was going on with you and your biological family, if your biological father is still around, still alive, reach out and honor him. That doesn't mean he's perfect, but honor your father. If he's not around, or if you just didn't have a good relationship, if you don't have access, you got access to father figures. Reach out to your godfather, your uncle, your big cousin, that coach, that old Sunday school teacher, that old deacon. Reach out to them and let them know that you honor them today and you remember how good they were to you and what they poured into you. And don't forget to remember all the great things God has done for you, lest you get discouraged. The best is yet to come. He ain't done with you. He began a good work in you, and he's going to perfect it. He's going to complete it. He's going to continue doing what he needs to do until he receives you in glory. So God bless you, children. Reflect on these things. Go back over Psalm 78 and remember, let me close right here with this prayer. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God and true to our native land. God bless you, children. Have a great Father's Day.